I always believed betrayal would come from someone I barely knew, a stranger, an outsider, someone with nothing to lose. I never imagined it would come from the person I trusted most, my best friend. We met years before everything collapsed, back when life felt uncomplicated and the future still looked wide open. Our friendship did not begin with some dramatic moment. It grew slowly through shared routines, late nights, and conversations that felt safe enough to lower my guard. Over time, he became the person who knew me without explanations. He knew my habits. He knew my fears. He knew the parts of my life I never said out loud. That familiarity created trust, and trust made me careless. When my relationship began to feel unstable, he was the first person I turned to. I told him about the subtle changes, the emotional distance, the silences that stretched longer than they should. I was not accusing anyone. I was just confused. I needed someone to tell me I was not losing my mind. He listened patiently. He nodded. He told me I was overthinking. Those words mattered more than he understood. Because they came from him, I ignored the quiet voice inside me that kept asking questions. I convinced myself that doubt was a personal weakness, not a warning. I chose reassurance over intuition, and I kept choosing it for a long time. There were moments when the truth almost surfaced, a look that lingered too long, a story that did not fully align, a sudden change of plans that felt rehearsed. Each time I pushed the feeling aside. I reminded myself that if something truly dangerous existed, my best friend would tell me. That belief became my anchor. Years passed under that assumption. I built my days around stability, around the idea that silence meant safety. I believed loyalty was proven by presence, not by difficult honesty. I believed comfort was a form of protection. I was wrong. Even when the truth eventually revealed itself, my thoughts did not immediately turn to him. My anger focused on what was visible, on the betrayal I could point to and name. I did not question the quiet figure standing beside me, the one who had watched everything unfold. He stayed silent. That silence stretched longer than I expected, long enough for me to believe it had no meaning. Then one night, without warning, it cracked. We were sitting in his car, parked on a quiet street. There was no tension in the air, no argument waiting to happen. We were talking about ordinary things, filling space the way people do when they are avoiding something heavier. Then he said it, almost casually. I did not know how to tell you. I turned toward him slowly. Tell me what? I asked. He kept his eyes on the road even though the engine was off. His hands rested on the steering wheel as if he needed something solid to hold. Then he spoke again, quietly, without drama. I knew, back then. I knew something was going on. The words felt unreal. I waited for him to laugh, to correct himself, to explain that I misunderstood. He did none of those things. He explained that he had noticed signs early on, that things did not add up, that the truth had seemed obvious to him. I asked him why he never said anything. He shook his head. I felt something inside me shift, not violently, but permanently. It was the feeling of a structure rearranging itself without permission. I asked him again, this time slower. Why did you stay quiet? He offered reasons. He did not want to hurt me. He thought it would stop. He was afraid of being responsible for destroying my happiness. Each explanation sounded small when placed next to the damage silence had caused. None of them explained why he listened to me doubt myself. None of them explained why he watched me carry confusion that was never mine to carry. Silence is not neutral. Silence is a choice. He chose comfort over honesty. He chose ease over responsibility. He chose himself over our friendship. The worst part was not that he knew. The worst part was that he let me question my own instincts. He let me blame stress, work, and exhaustion. He let me believe I was the problem. As he spoke, memories began to rearrange themselves. Conversations I once trusted felt rehearsed. Reassurance sounded hollow in retrospect. Moments of hesitation suddenly made sense. I realized something painful. My loneliness did not begin with betrayal. It began with silence. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse him. I did not even feel the anger I expected. What I felt was distance. In that moment, I understood that the person beside me was not who I thought he was. Friendship, I learned, is not measured by how comfortable someone makes you feel. It is measured by whether they are willing to speak when speaking costs them something. That night, I went home and sat alone, replaying years of conversations. I wondered how different my life might have been if he had spoken once, just once when it mattered. Maybe I would have trusted myself sooner. Maybe I would have faced the truth earlier. Maybe I would have saved myself years of quiet doubt. But the past does not change. What changes is perception. I did not end the friendship immediately. There was no dramatic confrontation, no final speech. I simply stopped sharing my life. I stopped asking for advice. I stopped assuming loyalty where silence had lived. Trust does not always shatter. Sometimes it fades. After that realization, my days slowed down in a strange way. I moved through routines carefully as if any sudden motion might reopen something fragile inside me. I started noticing details I used to ignore. The tone of voices, the pauses between sentences, the moments when people avoided eye contact. Silence became louder than words. It followed me into meetings, into casual conversations, into places where trust once felt automatic. I questioned my memories with a new kind of honesty. I asked myself when I first felt unsure, when the discomfort began, and how often I had pushed it aside. I remembered nights when I almost called him, ready to ask one more question, and nights when I decided not to. I remembered how relief followed his reassurance, and how that relief kept me still. Looking back, I understood that comfort can be dangerous when it replaces truth. I also realized how easily loyalty can be misunderstood. I had believed loyalty meant staying close, staying supportive, staying quiet when things were difficult. I had believed loyalty meant protecting someone from pain. Now I understood that real loyalty sometimes creates pain in the short term to prevent deeper damage later. Real loyalty risks the relationship to protect the person. Silence protects the speaker, not the listener. This understanding changed the way I evaluated my relationships. I stopped measuring people by how present they were and started measuring them by how honest they were willing to be. I paid attention to who asked difficult questions and who avoided them. I noticed who challenged me when something felt wrong and who offered easy explanations instead. These observations were uncomfortable, but they were necessary. There were moments when I felt tempted to confront him again, to demand a clearer explanation, to ask him to acknowledge the weight of his choice. Each time I stopped myself, I realized that closure does not always come from conversations. Sometimes it comes from acceptance. Sometimes it comes from deciding how much access someone will have to your life going forward. Over time, the sharpness of the betrayal softened, but the lesson remained. I learned to listen to my instincts again, to treat doubt as information rather than weakness. I learned to pause when reassurance arrived too quickly, to ask myself whether it was grounded in truth or convenience. I learned that clarity often feels uncomfortable at first, but confusion costs more in the long run. I also learned to forgive myself. I had spent years believing that noticing something was the same as accusing someone, and I avoided both. I forgave myself for trusting the wrong signals. I forgave myself for wanting peace. Understanding my own intentions helped me move forward without bitterness. Today, when I think about that friendship, I do not feel anger. I feel awareness. I know what silence can hide, and I know what honesty requires. I carry that knowledge into every relationship, not as suspicion, but as respect for truth. I no longer expect people to save me from pain. I expect them to respect me enough to tell me the truth. In the end, the betrayal taught me something valuable. It showed me that the absence of warning can be as damaging as the act itself. It taught me that the people we trust most have the greatest responsibility to speak. And it reminded me that my own voice, my own intuition, deserves to be heard, even when it makes others uncomfortable. As time passed, I noticed another shift inside me. I became more patient with uncertainty and less tolerant of convenient answers. I allowed conversations to sit in silence without rushing to fill the space. I asked follow-up questions and waited for real responses. This did not make me colder, it made me clearer. I stopped assuming that good intentions automatically lead to good outcomes. I learned to separate intention from impact, and that distinction changed how I listen. I also began to recognize how often people confuse kindness with avoidance. I saw it in small interactions, in workplaces, in families, in friendships. People avoided uncomfortable truth because they wanted to be liked, because they wanted to maintain harmony, because they feared conflict. I understood that fear, but I no longer respected the choice. Avoidance postpones pain, but it multiplies consequently.